Today's battle report is a game that the rejects played last weekend. Richard brought his Franco-Prussian War collection back to the shed of war for another game of They Died for Glory. The war has not been going well for the French. They've been beaten every turn since the start of the war, and the French army of the Rhine under Marshal Bazaine is now trapped and besieged in the fortress city of Metz. The French government has set the newly formed army of Chalon under Marshal Beaumont the task of lifting the siege of Metz to free Marshal Bazaine. However, Moltke and the German forces are on the hunt and are quickly harassing Beaumont's forces, chasing them in a bloody game of cat and mouse. Yesterday, the French Fifth Corps, led by the less than competent General Fallet, bumped into the German 12th Corps. They managed to beat the Germans back, and Fallet then force-marched his corps to the area around the town of Beaumont. With a negligent lack of urgency, Fallet paused to rest his troops and allowed his men to prepare food. However, the Germans had finally caught up with them and rudely interrupted the French lunch with an artillery bombardment. The French were soon pushed out of Beaumont and must now conduct a fighting withdrawal if they are to cross the Meuse with their force intact. It is now 2:30 in the afternoon, and this dangerous manoeuvre must commence even as the German columns bear down on their position. For more details and maps and orders of battle and so on, please check out Richard's blog. I'll put a link to his post in the description box below. I was one of the 3 German commanders for this battle, and I took control of the Saxons on the right wing of our line. This area would see a lot of action over the next few hours, but I managed to snap a few pictures during the game. Now, of course, inevitably this means that my battle report will be very German-centric, so I would of course urge you to read Richard's blog of the game and Ray's blog post as he was on the French side. Our positions were laid out by Richard ahead of the game, and it looks like a German victory is inevitable. Here you see my Saxons on the right of the German line, massing for their attack. French positions look thin, but they have taken advantage of patchy woods to set up some sort of defence. In particular, a number of farmsteads have been occupied and fortified, ready for the assault. There's also a mass of French cavalry in the centre of the table that looks terrifyingly efficient, but will they stay and fight? Opposite them on the German side, the Bavarian troops look very nice in their light blue uniforms, but they are of a poorer morale quality. The German positions do look impressive as they prepare for their assault, but somehow the French must try and withdraw with most of their troops unmolested if they are to score any sort of victory from this disaster. The game commences with a massive German artillery onslaught, destroying nearly all of the French artillery by the end of the first turn. The French try to respond with the artillery that survives, but overall it is very ineffectual. Now the Saxons and the Prussians push forward into a hail of French rifle fire. Some of their skirmish screen is forced back as a result. French commanders are clearly worried by this surging forward of the Prussian line and gather at the end of the table to quietly discuss what to do. Meanwhile, Saxon and Prussian cavalry funnel into the centre, ready to exploit any gaps in the French line. Over on the German left, the Bavarians are coming under sustained fire from a farmhouse and the woods. As the German attack develops going forwards, it soon becomes clear that the French are withdrawing those troops that they can and fortifying woods and farmhouses to use as strong points to slow the German advance. And all the while, French units, the cavalry and any other unit that can do so are fleeing pell-mell down the main road towards their route of escape. By now the German assault is starting to go in, and my Saxons are hitting the French troops in the forest. The fighting is intense, but the results are mixed for both sides. Sergeant's Prussians start to go in towards this gap and the farmhouse, but there seems to be fewer of his units there where they're supposed to be going in, and more crowding in on the border of my troops, forcing me into a smaller and smaller space. I want to move some of my units around the left-hand side of my line, but I can't because he suddenly moved cavalry there. This isn't quite what we'd agreed before the game started, but he has seen the gaps, and maybe Sergeant has seen something that I haven't. The fighting around the forest becomes even more intense, and I manage to get my units behind the woods as I destroy one of the French units. In a turn of good fortune, Guns from the 12th Corps, who have already managed to cross the Meuse, have responded to the sound of fighting and deployed 2 batteries on the heights overlooking the fighting. Now the Prussians in the centre, under control of Serget, move up towards the centre and that main hill, aiming for the farmhouse on the top. But in so doing, they restrict the space that my Saxons have to operate on the right flank of the German line. Prussian and Bavarian cavalry pour through the centre of the German line, but they're still beyond the front line of infantry, and they should be out front trying to harass the French and stop them from escaping. The centre of the German line is becoming a tangled mass of infantry units and cavalry. The French resistance in the woods on our right flank is becoming tenacious and very annoying, as is the artillery that has just recently taken up to the heights. It won't last long, but it lasts long enough to cause some problems. Meanwhile, Serget is moving his troops up to the crest of that hill to attack the farmhouse. Down in the woods, I'm repositioning my forces to hopefully wipe out what's left of the French defence. We need to cause casualties if we're going to win this battle. While some of my Saxon forces manage to slip behind the woods and begin the pursuit of other French forces which are trying to escape, I bring together other units to try and wipe out what's left of the French resistance in the woods. The ending combat is one-sided and one of the French regiments is completely destroyed. Meanwhile, Serget's Prussians have fought their way to the top of the hill and now attack the farmhouse. The fighting is intense and bloody, and eventually the French defenders are ejected. But they've done their job. They've delayed the Prussians, and now they can withdraw with their heads held high. Their withdrawal abandons the farmhouse but carries them away towards their line of escape, which is exactly what the French want anyway. By now the day was drawing late and he decided to end the game there. Richard had to do some quick calculations to work out if the French had managed to withdraw enough of their forces. The golden target was they had to have, if they lost less than 178 figures, then they had beaten history. The end result was 173 figures, and the French had indeed snuck the narrowest of narrow victories from a really well fought game.